Hello friends, I hope you're well. I hope you all had a great long weekend. I hope that with the amount of public holidays I could make a whole bunch of videos, but the universe had other plans. Plans to make my entire household sick. And you may be wondering why I'm telling you this. Well, aside from explaining the lack of videos from the last fortnight, I wanted to let you know why I'm feeling so spicy. After all, today's story is rather high on the Scoville scale. Welcome to the Dirt Reporter special episode covering the Optus hackathon, a dreary 9-day extravaganza of absolute idiocracy. And you know what? From my view, the worst handled data hack in Australian history. Bar the hack on Triple J, that's still hot garbage. Of course, as always, let me know your thoughts below. Like this video if you did, and subscribe to support us. I am sorry about the length and the lack of imagery. This is gonna be a long one. Let's get started by rolling the intro. Before we hear about Optus not cooperating with the Australian government, and I make the obvious remark, who would have thought an overseas company would cooperate with our government, let's go through what happened. The 21st of September 2022, a day that will live in infamy, a Wednesday, a day that started like any other hump day and ended. Then came the 22nd, a Thursday. The wire goes crazy, breaking news! Optus Systems sustains a significant cyber attack that results in a major data breach of both current and former customers' personal information, including customers' names, dates of birth, phone numbers, and email addresses, with a smaller subset of customers having their street addresses, driver license details, and passport numbers leaked. Thursday, Optus announced they had suffered a data breach, but more than likely it happened at least a day earlier. Wednesday, now that's journalism for you. At the same time, according to the AFR, a non-executive board member and a director of Singtel, the parent company of Optus, based in Singapore, placed a call seeking the advice of an Australian cybersecurity and privacy advocate. The advocate, staying anonymous, told AFR the board member asked them for their advice on details about the hack. They wanted to know which parts of the organization had likely failed. Then Signup issued a single update to the Singaporean Stock Exchange about the data breach, alerting shareholders that customer details were stolen. Shareholder management, or they just don't care that much? How did the hacker get the data? Let's start with that. Well, according to the ABC's Andrew Green and Bank Info Securities' Jeremy Kirk, the hacker wasn't much of a hacker. He or she used an unauthenticated API endpoint to download all the customer's data. In layman's term, API is a go-between for two different pieces of software. A popular example is weather APIs. Most weather apps get condition information from an API belonging to an organization like the Bureau of Meteorology, which actually physically collects the data. So each weather app has the same source data, just different skin, so whichever one you like. So what was this API for, and why was it open? Well, the ABC quoted a senior figure inside Optus who said that the API in question was for an Optus customer identity database, and that it was open to a test network that happened to have internet access. Speaking of quotes, the hacker wrote on a forum post, "No authenticate needed. This is bad access control. All open to internet for anyone to use." But more on that later. As a side quest, can you guess what region of the world the hacker could be from? To put it another way, the API did not require anyone to log in order to access its functionality. And no alarms went off. It's like your local bank leaving their back door wide open, and since you're already inside, stealing cash is more like moving inventory. No one really questions you because why would they? You're inside, all the doors are supposed to be secured. Okay, on the 23rd of September 2022, the hackers begin making posts on an online forum site called Breached under the username Optus Data. Very colloquial. All about its exploits, the discussion of the hack in fair detail, and proving the authenticity of the data. That was quickly authenticated by the media, and so we had proof of life. However, Australian news outlets The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald reported that Optus was still investigating the authenticity of the data and the ransom demand of $1 million United States dollars. That's not that much. The hacker gave Optus 1 week to pay the ransom in cryptocurrency, or else all the data will be sold for a bargain $300,000 to whomever wants it. Maybe they should just wait for that and just go, hey, I'll buy it, done. But this is very generous from these hackers. At this stage, Optus declined to comment, rightly so, probably in shock, specifically on the explanation that human error may have played a role. APIs left open, that's generally a specific type of error committed by a human. While human error might have been a contributing factor in the Optus data breach due to its insecure software interface, Chief Executive Kelly Bayer Rosmarin insisted on the sophisticated nature of the attack. Now, look, English is my second language, so after 20 years speaking it, I still like to check the dictionary sometimes. So let's have a quick check of what sophisticated means in the Oxford English Dictionary. It's described a machine or system that is clever and complicated in the way that it works or is presented. Well, here is a little line out of the Optus API developer page. Just follow the 3-33 rule of API discovery. 3 seconds to search for an API, 30 seconds to explore the documentation and understand our API capabilities, 3 minutes to set up and try the API response from the developer portal. Look, I'm not saying it could be done by a 5-year-old, but I'm insinuating the fact that Optus doesn't comprehend the amount of tutorials available on YouTube, and you only have to be 13 years old to have a YouTube account. But don't let me tell you that. How about someone much smarter than me, someone who specializes in cybersecurity? Here is what Cybersecurity Minister Claire O'Neill said. Contrary to Optus's claims that it was the victim of a sophisticated attack, the breach was quite basic and that Optus left the window open for data of this nature to be stolen. Her fury only escalated when Medicare numbers were found in the stolen data. She was quite calm before that. She said this as she delivered a withering assessment of Optus's conduct during a parliamentary sitting, and the comments have potentially put the job of Chief Executive Kelly Bayer Rosmarin in jeopardy. So what did Optus CEO Kelly Bayer Rosmarin say? Well, she urged customers to exercise heightened awareness regarding transactions with their Optus and other accounts. Rosmarin did emphasize that passwords were not compromised at all, just everything else that identifies you. Adding that a worst case scenario regarding the numbers of customers whose data has been leaked was 9.8 million customers, but believes the actual number to be far lower. Now, like a jealous ex, Optus tends to hang on to things. Some call it data hoarding. So Optus finished the day by announcing the suspected API endpoint is offline, meaning there's no further risk of more information being retrieved. Hooray, the day is saved. September 26th rolls around. Home Affairs Minister Claire O'Neill has blamed Optus for the attack, and the hacker still has the personal data of over 10 million customers, estimated to include 11 million, and the ransom has been set at a cool 1 million USD in crypto. The hacker, going by Optus data on the forum, looks to give Optus a push in the pay me direction by releasing the data of 10,000 customers for the world to see. Quickly, the media confirmed the authenticity of the information while Optus scrambles. September 27th has arrived, and here's when things get really weird. First off, the 10,000 people whose data was made public not 24 hours earlier began to feel the pain. Extortions. Victims of the breach began reporting that they have been contacted with demands that they pay 2,000 Australian dollars or their data will be sold to another hacker. But like any smart Aussie, they laughed it off and said, mate, it's available online for free. Why would I pay you just if I can download it myself? Then, like an M. Night Shyamalan movie, a twist. In this twisty story, Optus data deletes their earlier posts and issues an apology to victims of the breach and to Optus. Yep, you heard that right. Oops, my bad, sorry, I've done goofed it, haven't I? Optus data said there were too many eyes, so they would not be selling the data to anyone, and claimed that they had deleted all the data from their personal drive and that they made no copies. Trustees. They offered an apology to the 10,200 people who had their data exposed via their posts on Breached, and to Optus itself, saying, hope all goes well with this. They finished by saying, would have reported exploit if had method to contact, and that while the ransom was not paid, they don't care anymore, as it was a mistake to scrape published data in the first place. It has still not been confirmed by Optus or the Australian Federal Police if those behind the Optus data account are actually responsible for the hack in the first place, because that just makes it another twisty twist in this twister of a story. 28th of September booms in and brings in the early morning murmurs of a first class action lawsuit with Maurice Blackburn. The first port of call: could this hack have been prevented? Well, like anything in life, it's hard to predict things, but a penetration test, or a pen test as the cool kids like to call it, would have brought up a giant red flag of an open API endpoint. Furthermore, an ISMS framework would have prevented the creation of an open API endpoint in the first place. In fact, Optus has an ISO 27001 accreditation from 2008. Side note, an ISO 27001 is a specification for an Information Security Management System, ISMS, and an ISMS is a framework of policies and procedures that includes all legal, physical, and technical controls involved in an organization's informational risk management process. So, that should have stopped it, but let's stop speculating. Long before this hack, Optus has resisted multiple calls by our government to increase their data security. Instead, Optus complained this would impose unnecessary costs on its operation. So let's thank Optus for funneling profits overseas, leaving its customers out in the pasture, and lovely "I told you so" from our government. Now what? Well, Minister Claire O'Neil said Optus needs to be upfront about what data has been taken for individuals, admitting the government doesn't know how many passport numbers have been stolen. She was particularly concerned for the more than 10,000 people whose sensitive data had already been published in the ether. That's what the cool kids call the internet. Spooky, right? She added, Optus advised me this morning that they have contacted the 10,200 people. I gave very clear feedback to Optus that an email was not going to cut it. On another bench, Government Services Minister Bill Shorten said about 36,900 Medicare numbers have been leaked. He said Services Australia was ready to act, but the government needed Optus to reveal who had been caught up in the breach. Optus at this moment is not cooperating with the Australian government to get ahead of this fallout. It remains unclear how many of the almost 10 million Optus customers impacted by the hack had their identities details stolen. Bill Shorten said Services Australia wrote to Optus on September 27th asking for the full details of all affected customers whose Medicare and Centrelink details were leaked. But he said in the 5 days since that request, Optus has failed to hand over their data to the government. He said, "We know that Optus is trying to do what they can, but having said that, it's not enough. It's been 11 days since the breach. It is peculiar that we still can't identify who, for example, used their Medicare information, their number, to be able to get identifications." The government said Services Australia would use the information to place additional security measures on the records of affected customers. So what's Optus doing about it? Well, Catherine Gledhick-Tucker, a Nyongar technologist and the vice chair of digital rights profit Electric Frontiers Australia, says an attack like this shouldn't have come as a surprise, and says the company is getting off lightly compared to what the consequences could be in other jurisdictions. She says that if we were in the European Union, for example, and Optus needed to be compliant with the GDPR, then they would be looking at a fine of up to 20 million euros or 4% of their annual turnover, whichever is greater, which would have been enormous, and that's separate to the issue of damages as well as for individuals. So far, Optus has been sort of forced to pay for the replacement of licenses and passports for the 10,000 already leaked customers. For the rest, they have put up billboards saying how sorry they are. Also, a 12-month subscription to an identity protection service that tracks potential criminal actions with your data. I don't see that as being much help in the first place, but the billboards, that's surefire way to really make it into my heart, really make my heart bleed for a corporation that isn't even Australian owned. This hack will have far-reaching effects across industries that require so much private information. Attorney General Mark Dreyfus said that it would review Australian privacy laws and could bring in boosted protections by the end of the year. He specifically said companies throughout Australia should stop regarding all of this personal data as an asset for them. They should actually think of it as a liability. Now, opposition cybersecurity spokesperson James Patterson said the coalition would be open to bigger fines for breaches of the Privacy Act. hacked. And for once, the federal government has blasted Optus's handling of the breach, saying it was a basic hack that had exposed millions of Australians to possible identity theft. Optus instead said they were legally required to hold onto customer data for 6 years, but questions are being raised over this too. Optus boss Kelly Bayer Rosemarin has apologized to customers, but is resisting calls to go. Let me know below, should she step down due to what looks to be a complete mishandling of the situation? Billboards, really? It's like the South Park episode where they rub their nipples and say, "We're sorry." I digress. The government announced that they will be introducing a very substantial reforms, including increasing the fines under the Privacy Act, which are currently capped at 2.2 million, which was called out as a totally inappropriate by Claire O'Neill, the hero of the story, of course. And on September 29th, O'Neill said in a tweet that Australia is probably 5 years behind where we need to be, and that she thinks the Australian government needs to lift its standards too. Finally, the specific piece of data that are important are the card numbers, for example, passport, Medicare, and driver license numbers. Those tie up your information and verify their authenticity. Now, certain states are starting to let you get new licenses with new numbers free of charge, like Queensland. New South Wales is issuing temporary digital cards on the Digital ID app, and Victoria has said they will replace cards too, but expects Optus to pay. The final tally, according to Optus, is 9.8 million customers, but the leak more than likely had 11 million due to customers who had left Optus since, but Optus kept their private data. The 10,200 people whose data was leaked as a threat are in another boat, and we'll follow that story very closely. So here's the thing, so far Optus has done bubblefuck nothing to reimburse their customer. They have yet to be fined and yet to compensate said customers. As it looks right now, they have gotten away scot-free, and no, billboards cannot change my mind. They need a good kick in the butt. The government has dragged Optus into paying for replacement passports and other identity documents for nearly 2.8 million Australians as the federal police investigate the now apparently abandoned extortion attempt of the telecom giant. So something is going on. But what can you do? Well, vote with your wallet. More providers out there. Go change. You can probably break on contract to them breaking your privacy laws. Consult a lawyer. Look, that sounds fair. Don't listen to me. Let me know your thoughts below. Make sure you like this video if you did. Share and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you all in another one. Have a good one. Bye.